Hey, what's up, everyone? Welcome back to Apollo Art Analysis. This episode, we're going to be taking a look at a piece by the AI generative artist Crypto Algo. In this episode, a little bit about near-symmetrical harmony. We're going to talk about divinity through scale, and as well, we're also going to talk about the metaphysical monuments of the Far East. So let's jump right into it. So whenever you first see this piece, you're met with a near-symmetrical spatial composition here. And this, of course, isn't perfectly symmetrical. You can see a bit of deviations there, and it, of course, is reflected across this vertical center axis there. The result is a really harmonious visual experience that also introduces us to this kind of divine scale, or this grand scale of a divine order. And so with that in mind, we see this incredible scale within the spatial composition. If we were to, say, reference this as the height of a normal person, you can see just how far up it goes. This is quite staggering, and this grand sense of scale also feels like we've reached a divine destination. There's something about this which feels, of course, ethereal, surreal, and just incredibly divine in its introduction there. And so this grand sense of scale really dwarfs the viewer, and it does introduce, of course, that scenes of divinity as well. And so we see this large kind of oval-esque portal commanding the center region of the spatial composition. This, of course, is right where that vertical center axis that we mentioned splits across, and this portal is pretty incredible. It's hard to say exactly what we're looking at other than just some type of portal in one way or another. We see the most rare color within the work at hand, or one of the most rare. Maybe the blue is the most rare, but this pink, really draws the attention. It's a very kind of beautiful base, and it sure does denote the difference between, say, the lower region of the spatial composition as well as the upper ones. It also gives that really fluorescent trim at the base of the portal as well, and of course kind of draws your attention in, kind of here in towards this position. So I think that's really interesting, also really important to note. That fluorescence also works alongside the sense of energy to really invigorate the visual experience for the viewer, as well as just the spatial composition in general. And so we see this kind of a highly abstract pagoda that moves up towards the top there. If you look at the top, you do see that curved top. And in some previous episodes, we went a little bit deeper dive on that, but the pagoda evolved from the ancient stupa. So just, looking at that inherently, there's this sense that the divine or the spiritual is just interwoven within its identity. It's evolved an incredibly long span. We're talking, hundreds of years, even longer than that. But the pagoda has always been used to represent some type of temple or divine destination. So we really see that here. Of course, the pagoda peaks our portal here, and it really does give that sense of the divine, as well as, say, looking at a temple that opens up into this portal here. So I think that's also really important to note. And so far within the peaked portal here, we see this lone subject. And this is quite interesting because I would say it's the only thing that actually resembles some type of human subject or some type of living being. These almost look like scarecrows or statues, although it's hard to say for sure. We do have, of course, lush kind of natural life all throughout the spatial composition, but this is kind of like that lone figure that really draws your attention. Not only does it draw your attention through, say, the rarity of it being the only figure within the spatial composition, it also draws our attention through this really loose light on dark contrast. So, its energy is just inescapable. Your eye is instantly drawn to that. So I think that's incredibly important to note. And it's hard to say exactly what or who this subject is. A subject appears to be walking away from us, kind of into the spatial composition. Maybe not like that. Maybe something more like that. But, regardless of that, we do see kind of that cloak or the shroud of our subject really gives this sense of a sacred status, and it's quite mystical. You wonder what that subject is, or who that subject is, or why they're going through the portal. It appears that the subject is walking away from us. I do see what looks like a staff in the left hand there. And so it does feel like we're looking at from the backside of that cloaked or shrouded figure, although it's hard to say for sure. But that figure really does draw your attention. Of course, very sacred status of our subject as well. And so we see kind of this divine light that's almost always characteristic of metaphysical displays. And so we see that most notably here Of course, there's that shimmer. You can even see the energy just radiating off of that. This really draws your attention. Oops, sorry. This really draws your attention and really pulls you into the spatial composition. Of course, it invigorates the visual experience way more than, say, these fluorescent hints of pink there. Really draws your attention, and then of course, you have that dark on light contrast set within this light on dark contrast. So there is like multiple layers as you move deeper within the work at hand. So all of that really works to create a very divine, very sacred, and a very spiritual visual experience. And it does that with absolute ease. So it's really blessing to be able to look at this. And so with that in mind, we're really seeing the continual adoption of AI generative art programs. And with that in mind, I asked the viewer, what does it mean now that these AI generative art programs, it's such a divine scenes as the one which stands before us? And, it's really hard to say for sure. But with that in mind, you do have to respect the AI generative art scene for what it's creating, whether it's that fantasy, whether it's that sci-fi, or that mix of kind of science fiction spiritualism, or that fantasy spiritualism that we see within the work before us here. So the result is just an incredibly, incredibly divine visual experience, and a very invigorating, very magical, and very mystical one is that. Hope you guys enjoyed. Hope you guys learned something. We talked a little bit about near-symmetrical harmony. We talked about, say, the origins of the pagoda. We talked about this kind of peaked portal that we see here, as well as that crowded subject, and also the metaphysical monuments of the Far East. Hope you guys enjoyed. Hope you guys learned something. If you guys enjoyed this piece, go check out Crypto Algo's work. Doing a lot of really good stuff. This is actually the second piece that we've ever showcased from him. Really blessing to be able to study this art, and we hope that we continue to do so. My name is Apollo. This was Apollo Art Analysis, and I'll see you guys on the next episode.
We hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you'd like to support our work directly, please check out our Apollo community tokens. Apollo Art Exchange is an ecosystem of art appreciation which elevates artists each and every day. Thanks for listening.